Good morning, North Middle School students. We're going to continue today talking about a monochromatic color scheme that includes the tints and shades of one color. So we're actually going to end up with a variety of different tints and shades of the color red. So you're going to start off by putting your name and 6A or 6B, whichever class you're in the upper left-hand corner of your paper, and then turn your paper over. It doesn't matter if the name is on the top or the bottom, but it does need to be on the back. We're going to start with a color palette that includes red, white, and black. Red is the only color I'm using. I will create the tints by adding white and the shades by adding black. I'll be using a medium-sized flat paintbrush. So I'm going to start off by pulling out some of that white paint, as I did in a previous demonstration. And I'm going to take just a tiny bit of red. You can hopefully see on my brush it's a very small amount. I'm going to mix it with my white paint. And when I mix it, I really mix it well. I flatten it out, I move it around, and I use both sides of my paintbrush. Now I'm going to take a little bit more white because I need to make sure I have enough paint to paint with. You can't paint without paint, so don't be stingy with your paint. Taking a little tiny bit more red, not a lot, and I'm mixing it well because at this point I really don't want it to be streaky. I'm going to start in the middle of my paper and I'm going to make a horizontal stripe going from left to right or right to left, whichever is best for you, and I'm using both sides of my brush. I'm going to paint kind of quickly because I want to add my next color pretty fast. I'm going to take a little bit more red and I'm going to add it to what's already there. And I, at this point, may need to pull out a little bit more white. But my goal is to get a deeper value than what I had last time. A little bit more red. A little bit less white. And when I lay it down on my paper, I can tell whether or not it's a little bit darker. To me, I can see the difference, but I think it does still need a little bit more. So I'm going to add more red using both sides of my brush, mixing well, and then I'm ready. So I'm going to paint the next horizontal stripe or band of color going from left to right or right to left. And then I'm going to go on the other side so that I have a very light red in the middle, and then it's going to get a little bit darker above it and below it. Now what I'm going to do is just gradually increase the tints so that they're a little bit darker as I go. So I'm starting with my next horizontal band of color going from left to right or right to left. I'm kind of blending it in a little bit with that first color. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Trying to keep those colors pretty much the same on the top and the bottom. Using both sides of my brush. If they're not exactly the same, it's okay. One thing I do want to mention at this point though is we don't want any white paper left showing. So you want to really make sure those colors are all touching and you go all the way off the paper. If it gets on the table, it's okay. You're going to clean the table when you're done anyway. Now at this point, I want to get all the white out of my brush. And I'm actually not leaving very much space for shades in this particular painting. I'll explain why in just a minute. But I want to get my brush clean because I don't want any white left in it when I get to the red. I want that red to be a very bright red with no lightening, no tint at all. So I'm going to make my next band of color a pure red. And I can overlap into the previous color a little bit so that there's no white showing. I don't want to lose that color, but it's okay to overlap. I'm going to make sure I've got plenty of paint on my brush and go all the way across from one side to the other. And you notice that my lines are not perfectly straight. They are not meant to be perfectly straight. This should look like a painting. not a mechanical drawing or not a computer generated image. This should look like a hand painted piece of artwork. So now I'm going on this side from left to right all the way across. Now at this point I am going to make my shade, and in this particular painting I'm only doing one shade. That's way too dark too fast. So I'm going to pull out some more red, take just a little bit of that black. Now I said I was going to explain why I'm only doing one shade this time. There's going to be other paintings that we'll do in the future where you're going to use more values in this. But this is actually going to be a background paper for a printmaking project. And the ink that we're using on the printmaking project is black. So for that reason, we don't really want this background paper to end up being too dark, because we want a good contrast between the black paint, between the black ink that we're printing with and the bright colors of the paint that we're painting with. Hopefully you can see that that is a darker value. And that completes my value painting. So I've started with the lightest value using tints in the middle, and I got it gradually darker and darker and darker until I got to a pure red and then a shade of red. So I appreciate the way you guys stayed very focused during this demonstration. Thank you so much. And now you guys have a great time creating your own art.